The winter wind moved through the narrow streets of the city, carrying scraps of paper and the distant sound of traffic. People walked quickly along the sidewalks, their coats pulled tightly around them as they hurried toward warm offices, busy restaurants, and comfortable homes. Most of them never noticed the man sitting quietly on a bench near the public library. His clothes were worn. His shoes were old. A small backpack sat beside him, holding everything he owned. To the people passing by, he looked like just another homeless man trying to survive another cold day. But the truth about him was something no one could imagine. His name was Daniel Brooks. And once upon a time, Daniel had been called a genius. Years earlier, Daniel had been one of the most promising students at a prestigious university. His professors often spoke about him with admiration. He sees problems differently, one of them once said. His mind works like a puzzle solver. Daniel loved mathematics, not the simple numbers most people learned in school. He loved the complicated problems that made others give up, equations that stretched across pages, theories that took weeks to understand. For Daniel, solving them felt like unlocking hidden doors inside the universe. His future seemed certain: a brilliant career, research, recognition, maybe even awards. But life has a strange way of changing direction. During Daniel's final year at university, his father suddenly became very ill. Daniel was an only child. There was no one else to take care of him. So Daniel left school. He told himself it would only be temporary, just until his father recovered, but his father never did. After months of hospital visits and financial stress, Daniel's father passed away. The medical bills were overwhelming. Daniel had no savings, no job, no home he could afford. One by one, everything disappeared. First, the apartment, then his belongings, then the life he had once imagined. Eventually, Daniel found himself sleeping in shelters and sometimes on benches near the library. Years passed like this, but something unusual about Daniel remained. Every morning, he walked into the public library. The librarians had noticed him long ago. At first they assumed he was simply looking for warmth, but soon they realized something different. Daniel spent hours reading books about mathematics, physics, and engineering. He filled notebooks with strange symbols and long calculations. Sometimes entire pages of equations appeared overnight. One librarian, Mrs. Collins, watched him carefully one afternoon. Curious, she approached his table. "Excuse me," she said gently. "What are you working on?" Daniel looked up. His eyes were tired but kind. "Just thinking about a problem," he replied. "What kind of problem?" Daniel turned a notebook toward her. The page was filled with complicated formulas Mrs. Collins couldn't understand. But one thing was clear: this man was not ordinary. Over the next few weeks, Mrs. Collins began bringing Daniel extra notebooks and pens. "Just in case you need them," she said. Daniel always thanked her quietly, but he never spoke much about his past. One afternoon, something unusual happened. A young university professor named Dr. Marcus Lee entered the library searching for research materials. As he walked past Daniel's table, something caught his eye: the notebook. Dr. Lee stopped. He stared at the page, his eyebrows slowly lifted in surprise. He leaned closer. "These equations, where did you get them?" he asked. Daniel looked slightly confused. "I wrote them." Dr. Lee blinked. "You wrote them?" "Yes." Dr. Lee sat down slowly across from him. "What exactly are you working on?" Daniel shrugged. "Just trying to solve a structural stability problem for large bridges." Dr. Lee felt a chill run down his spine. The formulas on the page weren't random thoughts. They were advanced engineering concepts. Concepts that even graduate students struggled to understand. "How long have you been working on this?" Dr. Lee asked. Daniel thought for a moment. "A few years." Dr. Lee flipped through the notebook, page after page of calculations, ideas, solutions. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. Finally, he asked the question that had been forming in his mind. "Daniel, have you ever studied engineering or mathematics formally?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I was studying mathematics before life," interrupted. Dr. Lee leaned back in his chair, stunned. he realized something extraordinary. This homeless man sitting quietly in the library might possess one of the most brilliant mathematical minds he had ever encountered. Over the next several weeks, Dr. Lee returned again and again to speak with Daniel. They discussed equations, theories, ideas. Every conversation confirmed the same thing. Daniel's mind was extraordinary. Finally, Dr. Lee made a decision. One afternoon he said, "Daniel, would you be willing to visit the university with me?" Daniel looked uncertain. "I don't think I belong there anymore." Dr. Lee smiled. "Trust me, you do." A few days later, Daniel walked nervously through the same university halls he had left years earlier. Students passed by without noticing him, but inside a small meeting room, several professors waited. Dr. Lee placed Daniel's notebooks on the table. The professors studied them carefully. Minutes passed. Then one of them spoke quietly. "These solutions, they're remarkable." Another professor nodded. "In some areas, they're ahead of current research." Daniel sat silently, unsure what to say. Finally, the dean leaned forward. "Daniel," he said gently, "would you consider returning to the university?" Daniel's eyes widened. "To study." The dean smiled. "No, to teach." For a moment, Daniel thought he had misunderstood, but he hadn't. Within months, Daniel was given a research position at the university. His work on structural mathematics soon attracted attention in engineering circles. Years later, his theories would help improve the safety of several major bridge designs. But the most powerful part of Daniel's story was not his genius. It was something else. Resilience. Because the man who had once slept on a cold bench outside the library had never stopped thinking. Never stopped learning. Never stopped believing that knowledge mattered. And sometimes, the world overlooks its greatest minds. Until someone finally takes the time to look closer. The homeless man people once walked past, without noticing, became the professor whose ideas changed the future. Because brilliance can survive even the hardest circumstances. And sometimes, the greatest genius in the room is the one no one expected.